Brené Brown, so excited to have you at Wharton.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I met some lovely students.
I couldn't believe you're just out greeting students.
It's like students. It's like the mothership for me. It's school. And they were here early, so we took pictures.
I feel like we could kind of adopt you because you're a huge Eagles fan. Did you see the blocked field goal last night?
Yes. We were just talking about this backstage. I blocked that field goal. I manifested that to happen. Yes. And I was still high on the UT Hook'em Horns win.
Yeah, that was not as effective as the Go Birds.
Let me try again. Hook'em Horns.
There we go. So I was at an event last week in New York, and someone came up to me, and after having asked a brilliant question, said, "You're my second favorite author." And I was very flattered, and then I was like, wait a minute, who's the first? And the answer was Brené Brown. I was just glad to be on the list.
I think, well, first of all, the podcast that we're doing together right now, people are laughing so hard at us. I was
at us, not with us.
Not with us, not at us. Literally, someone put, "I love the podcast. I think of y'all as smart people, and it's so weird to watch you change your minds."
Isn't that what learning is?
Where's your book? Think again. So I have fun working with you.
Same. It's so strange to me, though, that anyone would think that there's anything we spend more time doing than learning.
No, I think for me, it's one of I've been talking about the new book a lot in organizations, and when people talk to me about, what's the human thing that we need to rely on and be excited about, to me, the most joyful thing is learning, the passionate pursuit of mastery, like really having a problem to solve or a strategy to figure out that you almost don't want to figure it out because trying to solve it is so much fun, and that's so uniquely human. I'm wondering why that's fallen out of favor a little bit. I'm wondering why the value has shifted from courage as being a knower instead of courage as being a learner. That's not going to serve us right now. It's just not going to serve us right now. Like, I guarantee you don't have anyone in this room, and there's some smart people in this room, none of us have the answers to the questions that we're going to be asked starting now. And I think it's really true. How many MBA students in here are this is the scary part. Like, you go into a new job right out of school, and there's so much pressure for you to make sure people know that you're smart. When I talk to senior leaders all over the world, and they're saying, boy, it's really problematic when people come in and they act like they know everything. What I'm looking for are candidates who have exquisite questions and are really hungry to solve the problem. And so I think we have to shift the thinking there a lot.
I'm inclined to agree with you on that, and asking questions is one of the things that you do best. So I think for those who have not been following Brené's work since you were 4, I think when I first became acquainted with your work, it was when you were introducing yourself as a narrative researcher, as somebody who studied stories, and I was just blown away by both the breadth and the depth of the questions that you ask people. And I've always wondered how you come up with your questions. And you just said, hey, asking great questions is a skill. Can you teach it to us?
I can, and I will definitely not take credit for it. I will definitely go back to Barney Glaser and Strauss.
Grounded Theory. Chicago School of Qualitative, I don't know what it's called, Chicago School of Qualitative something. It was really interesting. This is a fun story. I've never told the story about them. So I'm a grounded theory researcher, and Anselm and Strauss
were trying to develop a methodology for studying children who were dying. And back when they were trying to do it in the late 50s and early 60s, there was a pact when a child was dying that the nurses, physicians, and parents and religious folks, clergy, would not tell the child they're dying. They would keep that information from the child. So Glaser and Strauss were trying to figure out, how can we talk to these children about their experiences when we can't let them know what's happening? So they came up with this idea of just a spill question, which became the real heart of grounded theory, which is, tell me about your illness. And the children would go like this. And just weirdly, Barney Glaser ended up being the methodologist on my dissertation. God, he was tough. Very old school, and I think he was in his 80s when he was on my dissertation committee. But the children would say, when he said, tell me about your illness, the children would go like this. I'm dying, and it must be really terrible, or it must really hurt, because not even my parents will tell me about it. Yeah, and so grounded theory became this methodology that they built around this idea, and it's very similar to almost clinical work, which is, Barney would tell me all the time, I don't give a about your academic pet peeve. I don't care what it is that you want to study. You find out who you want to study, and you find out what's on their heart and mind. Then you build the study. And no lit review. Because if you're going to do a literature review before you start a study, you must already know the answer, which makes you so smart you don't need to work with me. But I was the first qualitative dissertation in my college, and they were like, what do you mean no lit review? So Barney had his name legally removed from my dissertation. I did a lit review that was really short. Then he put his name back on, and the lit review I did had nothing to do with what I ended up finding in my dissertation. And so it's really about, if we got as close, the closest I could get today to the scholarship that you and I look into is probably design thinking. It's probably what engineers and designers use, where you start with empathy, you study what people need, you study what's really important to them, and then you build. So in grounded theory, we start with the main concern of the population, and then the theory we develop is how the population is continually resolving that concern. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And how we continually resolve those concerns is the basic social process that becomes a grounded theory. One of the things I think is this the nerd out? Is this too nerdy?
I don't know, we have to ask.
I mean, who am I asking here? I think what's interesting is that's the way I work today. So if I go into an organization, you know what it's like. You go to the C-suite, and I'll spend 3 weeks just asking questions. I'll just look at a CEO and say, what's on your heart and mind? If you sit up straight in bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, what are you worried about? And then that's what I'm trying to resolve. I'm not looking at, yes, I'm listening to investor calls, and yes, I'm looking at data, performance data, and engagement data, but what I really want to know is, what is keeping you up at night, and how do we go after that? And I'll give you just a really interesting example of this that I think drives it home. Barney was on a dissertation from a woman in Houston, and she and I became friends because she survived his mentoring, and she was out. And she was getting her PhD she was a nurse, and she was getting her PhD in nursing, and she wanted to understand why end-of-life hemodialysis patients, unlike other end-of-life patients, rarely had DNR, rarely had do not resuscitate orders, but very specifically end-of-life hemodialysis patients. And so she said, I think it's because of this and this, and Barney said, stop. You don't know. You have no idea. No guessing, no literature review. The nursing school had a fit, but she did it. What she learned was that end-of-life hemodialysis is so painful physically that you cannot both keep doing it and try to live while simultaneously planning for your death. That you cannot do both. And the thing about a grounded theory is it's abstract the data. So the way that her theory was mostly used was not even in nursing, but to help explain Enron in Houston. That an organization cannot simultaneously prepare for its demise and struggle to survive, which put rules, organizational rules, into a lot of oil and gas companies that you have to have a plan for shutting down before you have to shut down, because it goes against human nature to try to do both. Does that make sense? So to me, the questions I ask are really about getting to what your main concern is, not what I think it is or what the world portrays it as.
So it's easy to see how you got into vulnerability, not only because it was a topic you were studying, but also because you're asking people to be vulnerable and answering these questions.
For sure.
I would say the typical CEO I encounter is not that excited to talk about the thing that they're stressed about. How do you break through that barrier?
Fifth generation Texan. Why am I here? If you don't want to talk about it, I got to do and places to be, so we can either talk about it or I can go home. I don't get it. And so it happens for about 10 minutes. But I think this is why I'm such a big sports person, so I use a lot of sports metaphors, as you know, including a chapter in the new book called The Tush Push. Because every team could benefit from some Newtonian physics. But I think for me, I often talk about playing to win versus playing not to lose. And so I'm not everybody's cup of tea, as you can imagine. But I just say, look, what's more important to you, to protect your ego or to win? And if you want to win, we're going to have these hard conversations. And if you can't have these hard conversations and you continue to play not to lose, let me tell you what that looks like both on a pitch, on a field, and in an organization. Playing not to lose is always losing.
How do you adapt that to the MBA and undergrad students in the room? So it's harder for them to go to their boss or their boss's boss and say, hey, do you want to succeed here or do you want to protect your fragile ego?
I would definitely send that via text. I think the strategy is actually the same. And I was talking to a recent MBA graduate actually on Friday at UT at McCombs, who said, and I'll give an example because I thought his question was really interesting. McCombs has I don't know if y'all have a program, they have a program for vets who want to come back and get their MBA. And so he said, one of the things that as a military leader, we were talking about how care for and connection with the people you lead is an irreducible prerequisite of courageous leadership. If you do not care for and are able to connect with the people you lead, you will never see performance, period. You might do well in a very short period of time, but we both know, if without genuine care for and connection with, you don't. And so he asked this question, he said, I come from a setting in the military where caring for and connecting to is a fairly low bar, which I think is true because we both do work in the military. Even the Air Force has, without deep affection for the troops you lead, we will move the soldier or we will move you. And so he said, that's how I lead, but it's not accepted by my boss or the senior leaders. And I said, then I would change the focus of the conversation. Here's how I would do the conversation. I would say, if you work for me, I want us to win, and I want to contribute to the win. Help me understand what that looks like. What do you need me to do to win? And then Adam would say, here's what we need to win. We need to reduce churn here, we need to increase growth here, and we've got to solve these two problems here. Then I would do this, always. Can I play back what I think you're saying? Always the playback. Here's what you're saying. We have a churn issue in residential. We need to reduce churn. we need to grow this thing by 3% a quarter for the next 2 quarters. And then we have this problem that we need to solve around supply chain. That's not directly me, but here are the 3 things I can do to help. And then your boss says, that's exactly right. Okay, I'm gonna be on it. I wanna ask you one thing. I have a way to win with my team that I think makes me the most effective leader and drives the most performance and trust in my team. I'm clear on what you want. I've played it back for you. I need permission to lead my team. That's exactly how I would do it.
That's powerful. Can you just accompany a bunch of our students to their jobs when they graduate?
No, I don't work for anybody. That's why, but a lot of people work for me, and but I think what you're missing in that calculus, what I think new folks are missing in not new folks, people in general. Like, if you're like, oh, is that how leaders talk to each other? Hell no. Like, 1 out of 1,000 people I meet would have that conversation, right? Like, it's a rare thing. The piece that's missing in the calculus is, tell me what winning means. I want to be a part of it. Then the playback. So here's what you're saying I'm going to need to do. Here's what you're looking for me to deliver with my team, or just me personally. And then playing that back. So you know who I go to? This is why we're such a cute couple on the podcast, because I don't remember anybody's name. And I'm like, who's that dude, researcher, Baylor? And you're like, the first article came out in 1977. It was published in HBR, followed by, yes or no? Yeah, okay. So the people that know you, yeah.
Try me.
Negotiating FBI.
Chris Voss.
Thank you, okay.
Never split the difference.
Never split the difference. Okay, so I was doing work with the FBI hostage negotiators because a lot of their work is about emotional resonance, understanding emotion, right? So Chris was in the audience, and Chris came up and said, man, I read your work on vulnerability because you have to really understand that. But here's something that I think is, if I had to give one takeaway from Chris's work that I think is really helpful, it's this. Whether hostages or the hostage taker lives, whether they live or die, often comes down to 2 words, which is empathy 101. You're the hostage taker, and I'm talking to you, and I'm the negotiator for the FBI, and you're telling me what's going on. I'm like, okay, so let me get this right, Adam. Let me get this right, Adam. You can never get a break. They took your kids. Your wife left you. They on you at your job. And nothing ever goes your way no matter how hard you work. And if you say back to me 2 words, that's right. There is a connection now that changes all of the variables about survival. And it's nothing secret to being a hostage taker. It's a human being. Like, we are neurobiologically hardwired to be seen and heard. And that's right is really a big part of being able to play back. So what's missing for, I think, new MBA students, new business students in general, just younger leaders, new people leaders, is the playback. So if I say to Adam, so all you really care about, Adam, is me reducing churn. And Adam goes, no. Reducing churn is part of a 3-legged stool. I need you to reduce churn, but we have got to have growth. We have to have ARR for 3 quarters that looks like this. So that part is missing when you're managing up. Does that make sense? It's a really big part of getting clarity. I hear you, I can play back for you accurately what's happening.
The other thing I love about this is it's classic motivation theory. I'm thinking about Victor Vroom, expectancy theory, who had a license plate that said Vroom, which made my day.
Is that true?
Yeah, that was real. So many people, when they try to motivate someone, they project their own motivations onto them, as opposed to saying, if I want to motivate you, I've got to know what you value.
That's it.
And so by starting the conversation with that leader and asking, like, what does success look like for you? I'm now in a better position to ask you for what I want because it's aligned with your values and your goals, as opposed to at odds with or unrelated to what you care about.
That's it. I mean, that's it. He knows everybody's name. And I can say, the carpet is centered. And you're like, 16 years of research on carpet centering. would show, I mean, this is why I love talking to you. It is really true. It's like you're really good at contextualizing we've worked on this.
I'm shaking my head at carpets.
Yeah, okay, but you're really good at doing this.
Thank you, Brené.
You're welcome.
Brené told me I was bad at accepting compliments, and a lot of people have given me that feedback. And I take pride in being someone who takes feedback well, and now I'm stuck. I have to say thank you.
There's so many things to compliment you about.
Enough. Okay, so you said you were going to compete to see who makes the other squirm more, and I feel like I'm losing. So, all right. No, I want to. You brought up the tush push, so I want to talk about the tush push for a second. We're going to talk about your new book, Strong Ground, and one of my biggest surprises in reading this book was when you had a chapter about the tush push. It's like, what, did you write this for us? Was this for the city of Philadelphia? We just won a Super Bowl. We didn't expect any more love, but here it is. But I have a little beef with your tush push.
Let's go.
Okay. It's the most boring play ever invented for fans. And the whole point of football is not to win. It's to create a great game for the fans. If you love your team... Wait, hold on.
Not from Texas. Go ahead.
Clearly not. I'm sorry. I just think sports are the best entertainment on earth as a sports fan. I think if you love your team, you support the tush push. If you love the game, you don't support it.
Wrong.
Why? Wait, can we just get an audience vote while Brené is thinking? How many of you are pro tush push? How many are anti? Oh, the whole audience is already with you.
Okay, let me tell you why. It obviously predates the Eagles as a very kind of classic short yardage play that belongs to the family of quarterback sneaks. Mm-hmm. To do it well is very rare, actually. And so to do it well, you have to leverage all three of the Newtonian principles of physics to actually carry it off. Like to do it and to win and to move the ball, the yard and a half, whatever you have to do. So I think that it might be boring because it might be boring to watch because we can't untangle the players visually. But I think if you think about the birth of the tush push, that specific quarterback sneak play, and how football players are becoming more interested in some other sports and kind of rugby and how a rugby scrum works and moves the ball, I think it's really interesting because you really have to leverage three things well. And I think for someone that's interested in our I'm interested in our relationship with the ground. I am interested in the midst of this maelstrom of uncertainty and fear and scarcity and cruelty and polarization, how do we find our way back to the ground? And I'm especially interested in how it relates to the ground, not only being one, the thing that tethers us to our values and what we believe in, but also provides us with the springboard for explosive change and action, which we need. Because only the ground can do those two things, both plant you firmly and send you flying. And so to me, when you think about the push-tush, and I think about leadership today, there's a couple of things that I think about. One is temporal awareness. So one of the laws of physics that really is used in the tush-push is how much time advantage in the tush-push play? I don't know the answer, actually. Would you guess the offense has at the snap?
It has to be tiny.
It has to be like milliseconds, right? Like the offense gets the snap and they have maybe a half a second advantage in time to move. Well, that's the first law of physics that it approaches, that if you move first, you have a huge physics advantage. For every action, there's a reaction. So you are pushing against the earth and the earth is literally pushing back. Like the turf cleanup after that play is incredible. And the ground force of every player whose athletic stance in the ground is their weight times some big multiplier. But the minute, that's like when you watch the Dolphins. I mean, I love the Dolphins coach. But the minute a player loses contact with the ground, their ground force is equal to their weight, not their weight times 10, because they're not in the ground. And that's why when you see these players on the defense trying to stop the quarterback from coming over top of the scrum, you're never going to stop them. And that's the way leadership works. Imagine being on a team with 10 people who are grounded in their values, grounded in a clear mission, grounded in operational excellence, grounded in clarity of strategy, with a slight temporal awareness against the competitors, pushing at the same time. That's freaking exciting.
I can see a bunch of people coming to work tomorrow morning and saying, we need more tush push in our strategy.
And I would be like, let's go. Yes, I think we do. I think we need, especially if you think about part of the ground out off the pitch or off the field, if you think of part of the ground as our values, that's huge. Can I do something? Like, let's stand up. So I was working with the UT football team when we did this, so it was so fun. So if you come over here and
I'm afraid of what's gonna happen.
No. If you come, he's so, like, his guns, I make fun of his guns every time he has this t-shirt on. I was like, you're working out. Okay, so.
Who invited you?
I make him so uncomfortable. I'm like,
why do you like this? Why is this fun for you?
It's so fun. It's like you have to take your joy where you can.
You can play this game. If I were not your host and trying to be gracious, all right, maybe I'll dish it back. Okay, but go. I'll play ball.
Okay, put the phones down. No recording. Like, I don't want to see this on Twitter. I'm just with you, like we're in class. So, like, this is the way I think the world's working within organizations right now. So, like, stand on one foot, right, and then go on your tippy toe. Right. So, yeah, right. So now, like, give me two, like, we talked about this and I love this, two of your values.
Generosity and excellence or integrity.
Okay, I love these. So put one foot in generosity and one foot in excellence and integrity.
Okay.
An athletic stance, like really athletic stance. Like, there's no moving people like that. Thank y'all to give it up for Adam. Yeah. But I feel like in the world right now, and you see leaders, they're on one foot, yep, on their tippy toe, not even aware of what their values are, no athletic stance, no readiness, and tariffs come, and geopolitical instability comes, and all the other that's happening comes. And they're just getting knocked over because we need to be grounded, especially in those values. And when you have a team of people who know who they are, have some degree of self-awareness, their values aligned, I think that's why the tush push is beautiful, you know? And I just think the Eagles do it better than anyone else.
I'm coming around. All right, I have to say one other thing on the tush push, but I want to pick up on the values theme. One other thing I have to say is it's just too lopsided of a play. It's too hard to stop. And for the same reason that we moved the extra point back, because it was just too easy to do the chip shot, I think the tush push is too lopsided.
So I'm going to go with Neil deGrasse Tyson here.
Uh-oh, you've got physics on your side.
Yeah. Why would we punish I don't remember what I wrote. But let me see, because I liked it. It's a direct quote. That's why I don't like to mess with it. Crap, I don't have any readers with me. Do you think it's under? What do you think it's under?
Tush push.
No.
Tyson.
Okay, Tyson. No, I can't see anything. Wait.
All right, I'll let you know if I find it, but go on.
Wait, race.
Oh, here it is, 26-27.
I put that stuff right up front, y'all.
Which part are you looking for?
I'm looking for when he said we shouldn't take. Okay.
Tyson's response to this potential banning was wonderful. He suggests that such ingenuity and physical prowess should be celebrated, not penalized. And he draws a cosmic analogy, comparing the unstoppable nature of the tush-push to phenomena like supernovas and black holes. Tyson suggests that once the play is set up, it is nearly impossible to stop, making my point for me.
But why? A supernova is hard to stop, and you're like, no. It's like if you want to leverage physics to your advantage, and you train for it, and you do it. Good. I mean, it's not. How can it? Look, okay. Let me just debate you this way. How can it be unstoppable if there's only a handful of teams that can do it well?
Interesting.
I see you are thinking again.
It's happening right now. Okay, I just want to see a team figure out how to stop it, and then I'll be happier. How about that?
I would love to see yes, I would love to see a team be able to stop it, and I'd love to see other teams be able to master it.
Yeah.
I think those two things will actually happen at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's right. So the first thing I want to try, and I'm going to bring this to Howie Roseman tonight and see what he says.
Okay.
I want to have the players set up like cheerleaders or gymnasts. And they're basically gonna put one person up in the air and throw them at Jalen Hurts as he dives. I've never seen anyone try it. Anyway, we can move on.
That won't work.
Why not?
I don't think it will work because I think the force of the
multiple players from the ground.
The offense from the ground will prevent the defense from being able to lift and throw accurately because it's pushing so hard.
I think that's probably right. I think it would just be fun to watch. All right, so you mentioned values, and I think that values are one of the most important parts of this book. You push us all to identify our two core values. As you know, I've been struggling with three.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that a lot of people have a hard time finding out what their values are. And I would love you to walk us through how to figure out what your values are. Maybe I'll just start by saying, for a long time, I thought about values just as guiding principles. And I said, it's what you care about. And I think that was incomplete. I think it's not just what you care about, it's what you sacrifice for. So one of the ways that I've become clear about what my values are is to look at the things that I give up and why. And so I saw myself, oh, thank you. I just said thank you, hey. No, I saw myself sacrificing time hanging out with my friends to field people's requests and help them. And that made it clear to me, okay, I'm giving up time with this group of people that I really like because I want to make a contribution here. That says to me that being helpful is really important to me. I saw myself in a couple of situations that I regret now, going out of my way to, well, actually the story doesn't really matter, but the gist of it was I saw myself wandering into situations where I thought I was probably going to fail, and I was willing to sacrifice my ego because I really wanted to get better. And I thought, okay, that's some combination of excellence and integrity. And so I guess my first question for you is, what do you think about this distinction of values aren't just what you care about, they're what you sacrifice for?
I think I'm going to use it from this split second forward.
Okay,
I think
it's yours.
Yeah, I'll send you a quarter every time I say it. Yeah, because what we talk about is we give people a list of like 100 values, and we just reverse engineered it. That's all it's not like there's a magic number of like everybody needs 2 values. It's just when we were doing the qualitative interviewing of daring leaders who care about performance and culture equally, who care about people and impact, they were so clear and could speak so quickly, and they never had more than 1 or 2 core values. And when I would dig in that, they would say, no, that's important to me. But the words they used often over and over, it's saturated across the data, but these 2 are where everything else is forged. Like, yes, I care about a lot of things, but these 2 values, this is where the rubber hits the road. So, but I really want to think about what you're saying because it immediately like pierced me directly emotionally. So I got to think about it more, but like my two values are faith and courage. And those are two areas where I would be willing to sacrifice and do that on a regular basis. Like, oh, Jesus, I want to hate your guts. But I'm going to sacrifice hating you because I have to find God in everybody's face.
And you roll your eyes as you say that.
I do. God has told me nothing about enjoying the practice at all. Like, she has directly told me, you can be pissed off the whole time, but you will need to find my face in everybody. I'm like, let me try looking at him like this. But I am willing to sacrifice a lot of things, including my self-righteousness, for my values. And I think it's a beautiful and a different way of thinking about where things are forged. So when we give people this ginormous list of values, there's the two places where they really struggle the most, and we talked about this on the podcast, was one, they're like, excuse me, are we talking about personal values or professional values? I was like, you only have one set, like just your values, you know, and if you're shifting, you can shift behaviors because everybody, you know, have to do that, but like who you are is who you are. And then the other question is like, I need 15. And so we always say, circle 15. And then start asking yourself, what two are the home base and the fire for everything else? And we've never had anyone not be able to get there, and we've probably done, well, we know we've done it with at least 160,000 people, because that's the data we have.
Only 160,000.
But over 6 years, yeah. So, but we know that people get there. But then what's really exciting is that's where they think they leave it. And you know, I'm not a fan of like a value not operationalized into behaviors. Neither are you. And that's what most organizations we go into have all the posters and have done none of the work. Like integrity with an eagle. Ha! Like, what does it even mean? Like fly fast and catch critters with your claws. Like, I don't even know what that means. And so then we have people operationalize their values into behaviors, find indicator lights when they're out of alignment. So for example, for me, I know I'm out of alignment with my courage value when I'm in resentment. Because I'm probably not being brave enough to ask for what I need or want, or I'm not setting a value, setting a boundary. I'm not being brave in some ways if I'm in resentment. And so that work becomes, it's actually a trick that we do. So this is why, how many students are in here? How many undergrads in here? Okay, so the undergrads saved us here. When we first started doing Dare to Lead work in organizations, the 4 skill sets of courage have held. They've held through COVID and all the new data, everything.
Tell us what the 4 are.
Are living into your values, the ability to rumble with vulnerability, meaning to be able to be in uncertainty, risk, and exposure, and be able to stay grounded, clear-headed, emotionally regulated, and make good decisions. The ability to build trust with others and self-trust. No one talks about self-trust, which is a big thing, and often the first casualty of failure. And then the last is to be able to reset. Can you be responsible for your own bounce after failure, disappointment, and setback? So these are the 4 skill sets of courage. When we first started teaching it, we taught rumbling with vulnerability first. And the college students in a course that I taught at UT, at the end, we asked for feedback, and they were like, dude, you need to teach values first. And I was like, why? And it was a class, we did the feedback as a class, so they could experience saying hard things to me that were productive and respectful, and we could say things to each other, and they could learn how to be, their nervous system, be in a hard conversation. And I said, tell me why. And they said, once you had to convince us that vulnerability was something we needed to experience and manage. But if you did values first, people would understand intrinsically that if they wanted to live into their values, they would need to be vulnerable and courageous. And you wouldn't have to convince anybody of anything. They're choosing courage, they're choosing generosity, they're choosing excellence. If you want those things and you want to live into those things, then diving into uncertainty and risk and exposure is not optional. And then you can stop preaching to us about vulnerability. And we're just looking down, and you can as one student said, you can just say, dude, you pick the value. Which is actually correct.
I love that. You know, it reminds me of an exercise I've been doing for years with students and also with leaders, and I'm going to put you in the hot seat for this one. So, okay, you just mentioned vulnerability. Why is vulnerability important to you?
Because my value is courage, and without vulnerability, there's no courage. If there's no uncertainty, no risk, and no exposure, you're not being that brave.
Why is courage important to you?
Because the word courage, in its original definition, cur, meaning heart, and the original definition of courage was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. We are nothing without our story, and to not tell it honestly pulls all the meaning out of our lives. So to me, I want a meaningful life, and I'm going to have to be brave to do that.
Why do you care about having a meaningful life?
I'd be failing this class. I'd be like, wow, he's peeling the onion. Why do I care about being brave? Because what's the point if you're not?
Okay, so this is my favorite thing to do with people.
Wow, that was hard.
It's supposed to be hard, but when somebody has a long list of values, we pick a value and we go through the why process. And eventually they just kind of throw up their hands and say, because that's who I am, or because that's important to me, or because otherwise what's the point? And at that point, I know we've reached a terminal as opposed to instrumental value. So many of our values are in service of other values, right? The terminal values are, no, this is core. So I think you landed courage as a core value.
I see you, Adam Grant.
What does that mean?
It was irritating but effective.
Okay, so but then to your point, yeah, it is annoying. I feel like it's like a mix of, well, it feels like what the Toyota 5Ys were not designed to do, which is to shut people down.
Shut people down,
yeah.
right.
No, what I think it has more comedic effect if you do it this way, but it's much friendlier when it's like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about why that's important to you. But I wanted you to suffer a little bit as payback. So. Anyway, but what's so interesting about it is once we get a core value, we want to then go the other way and say how. How do you live that value?
Yeah.
And that's where you get to your behavioral standards. So I would love to hear you talk a little bit because I have been just floored by how specific and clear and actionable these are. Like, can you take us from, okay, my core value is courage, to how do you come up with behaviors that would fulfill courage and violate courage?
I think the hardest one that I'm a C+ in, that I'm working in every day because it's so I don't talk about people, I talk to people. So as a leader, instead of talking you when I'm frustrated, I'm going to get unfrustrated first, try to get above the line and be productive, and then I'm going to talk directly to you. So that's courage in action for me.
And how did you come to that as a behavior that was key to courage?
You know, Richard Rohr, the Franciscan friar who I love, said, he calls it the grace paradox, and he said the thing about spiritual development is you will learn much more by failing and getting it wrong than you will by getting it right. And I think it was from the integrity hangover that I would have after I talked about somebody with someone and thought, A, the person I was talking about deserves more respect than this, and B, the person I was talking to should in fact trust me less.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't want to be that person. And I would say I have more hard conversations a day than 90% of the people I know. I think I can, when I'm above the line and I'm in fear or concern, but I'm still driving rather than like fear is driving and I'm under the line, I think I'm pretty skilled at it because I've
seen it. I can vouch for it.
Oh.
I've been the beneficiary of it.
We have had a hard conversation or two, yeah. Because I know I go in knowing, let me rephrase that, I go in knowing that I'm very messy and imperfect and I will have had a part. And whenever's not going well, I have a part. So I try to go in with a lot of humility and curiosity. And I've gone to a lot of therapy, and I have a really good coach. And so, yeah.
I want to pick up on two things there. The first one is, I think of maybe all the sentences you've ever written, the one that I find myself referencing the most, including when we teach difficult conversations here, is the story I'm making up is. I think about this all the time. Whenever I go to give someone some feedback or raise an issue that might be a little bit touchy or contentious, like, okay, the story I'm making up is. Can you just walk us through how to apply that?
Yeah, I think it's been, I'm looking, where are Murdoch and Zara? From my team are here. How often do you think we say that a day? Oh my God, was the answer. That's a qualitative version of a lot. I think that our brain is wired for story. We know that. That's not like an advertisement. It's like literally wired for narrative. It's how we've taught and communicated since the beginning of human history. When something hard happens, because our brain is wired for survival above all things, it looks to understand what's happening with a story. And the brain does not like a messy story. The brain likes a very clear story, bad guy, good guy, dangerous, safe, on your side, against you. So the minute you can give your brain a story that has the bad guy, who's against you, and what's dangerous, you're literally rewarded chemically with more calm. So let's say Adam and I are in a meeting, and I work for Adam. And we walk out of the meeting, and I say, great meeting, I'll see you this afternoon. And Adam looks at me and goes, what the f-? And just walks away. How many of you would be hooked by that if that was your boss? Like, are y'all alive? Like, you would be, trust me, if you're a student in here, you'll be hooked.
What do you mean, hooked by?
Like triggered, like, oh yeah, because your boss just looked at you and went. And so immediately what the brain says is what's happening, what's happening, what's happening. And the way it normally plays out is, oh my God, I pissed him off. I did something in that meeting. I should have not shared those sales numbers with the client. Oh my God, what's going on? And then all of a sudden I call Galveston. I'm gonna call you Galveston because you're from Galveston. I call Galveston and said, have you seen Adam today? I don't know what's going on, but steer clear. He is so pissed off. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get fired. Oh, you have a meeting? Oh my God, you may be getting fired. How many times a day do you think that happens in organizations? A lot. So I've called the decision tree, like all this is going on. So what we found, that fourth quality of courage, the ability to rise, the ability to reset, what those folks had in common more than anything was the ability to check the stories they're making up. And so the first question you ask is, do I know what's happening and do I have enough data? And let me tell you, neurobiologically, they're like, we don't give a shit, give us a story, tell us who is against us. And so what would happen if I went into my office and I thought, oh God, I don't know what's going on. That was pretty scary. I'm a little bit under the line here. I need to calm down. For me personally, I know I'll need to walk. I'll loop the parking lot. I'll walk the office. Okay. Hey, Adam, do you have a sec?
Yeah.
When we were leaving the meeting today, and I said, have a great day, you looked at me and you were like, and the story I'm making up is something happened in that meeting that really pissed you off, and I just want to check in with you, and if we've got something to clean up, I'd love the opportunity to clean it up. And then Adam looks at me and said, oh my God, that meeting was scheduled to end at 10 o'clock. We went to 11:15. I have Zumba every Thursday at 10:30. What the Why were these meetings going so late? Yes or no? And you're like, wait, what about the part where I'm the center of your world? And everything you do and say is about me, you know? And so be really honest here, which you are actually never anything but, in my experience, to be honest, which is kind of a pain in the ass sometimes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That compliment he accepted, only because it was like pain in the ass rising. As a leader who works for you, I knock on your door and say, here's the story I'm making up. Do we have something to clean up? Do you respect me more or less?
More.
Trust me more or less?
More, because I know that if there's ever an issue between us, you're going to bring it to me, as opposed to me wondering what you're thinking but not repeating, or maybe gossiping about behind my back.
Yeah. So the story I'm making up is an incredible tool because it's honest, and it's just saying, I'm concerned, here's what I think is going on, I just want to check it out with you. Because A, I respect you, and I respect our relationship, and I don't want to get in the way.
Okay, this reminds me of something I've been so curious about for a long time and never asked you, which is sometimes I find it helpful to go into a conversation like that when I've made up the story and I'm worried about how it's going to go, and just say to the person, I'm actually afraid to have this conversation with you. And I've found that enormously helpful in lowering their defenses. And I'd love to hear your explanation of why. I have a hunch, but I don't want to anchor you.
Well, you don't want to anger me?
In a particular, I don't want to anchor you in a particular.
Oh, anchor.
Yeah,
I thought you said anger me.
No.
Oh, no, anchor. I think it's like walking in, hey, good to see you, vulnerability card. I'm leading the conversation with like, hey, thanks for taking the time. I'm a little anxious about talking to you about this, but you're important to me and this is important to me. And I think it's honest and authentic, and it's showing you're leading with your humanity. You're not leading with your prosecutor. You know, you're not leading with any of your friends, right? You're just leading with humanity.
I think that tracks for me. I think the other thing that sometimes happens is the other person immediately wants to disown being terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be afraid of me. You can tell me anything.
Yeah, right.
And they actually have to prove that they're open, even if they weren't before.
That part gets a little trickier, yes.
Yeah, and then I'm like, wait, no, I don't want this to be manipulative. I'm trying to level with you that this is a hard conversation for me to have.
Yes, so I think the key there, because you could, depending on the way you delivered that's why I love the story I'm telling myself right now, or to say, I'm anxious about having this conversation with you, but it's important to me. If you say scared, you could push a certain personality type into defensiveness. Because what they could go is, Jesus, you think I'm an asshole? Yes. And it could just derail you. So I think part of this is the self-awareness and the relational awareness of knowing what is your relationship with this person.
That's helpful. Thank you. Okay, I want to follow up on one other thing that struck me as you were talking about turning values into behaviors.
Yeah.
Which is, I think you've just given us a clue to a different way of living our values than I've always thought about it. I've always had people, I've seen people make a list of their values and then, okay, let's write down and talk through what does it look like to uphold them, what does it look like to violate them. And there's something both overly cerebral about that and also, It's undergrounded in people's day-to-day experience. And I think what I just heard you tell me is you kind of do a mini qualitative study of yourself. You observe, like, take the next week or two and think about the moments where you felt like that wasn't me.
Yes.
Or I failed at courage today.
Yes.
And then build the list from the ground up.
Yes.
I love this idea.
Yes, because we asked 2 questions, and people, it's so weird because we asked 2 questions. Share a time when you were outside of your values and what it felt like in your body. Share a time when you were in your values and what it felt like in your body. And so one of the things that's really interesting is the whole disembodiment thing, that we are just not connected to our bodies, is also part of strong ground. Like, we got to get reconnected. If I was hiring for one quality, it would be self-awareness. And I don't think you can have deep self-awareness if you're disembodied, because a lot of your self-awareness comes from your body. Like, they call them feelings because that's where they happen first, right? And you feel them. So when we ask people, tell us a time when you were in your values and what did it feel like in your body, people hate answering that, but they'll answer what it felt like when they were outside of their values. And one thing that we see a lot in the research from when we collect, after we take people through Dare to Lead and they talk about all the exercises, is, and this is like, I would not say this is empirical, I would just say this is anecdotal, with a lot of anecdotal, is in my values, very difficult, but in some way energy giving. Outside of my values, on the surface easier, but absolutely depleting. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. The paradox of this was easier to piss and moan about somebody than to talk to them, but left me feeling hollowed out. I had to have a hard conversation. I had to practice it for 2 hours with my coach. I didn't sleep the night before. But when it was done, I had more energy. And I think that's about alignment.
Excellent. Okay, you ready for a lightning round?
Yeah.
All right. Who's at your dream dinner party, alive or dead?
My mom, my grandmother, and my immediate family.
Wow. Everyone always picks celebrities.
Oh, we don't give a no.
All right. Worst career advice you've ever gotten?
I'm going to talk about a subject we both hate. Yeah. Executive presence.
How many people have been told you need to work on your executive presence?
So I'll just tell a quick story on Adam, which was one of my favorite things. I have a chapter in the book after the tush push called Pocket Presence. When I say there's a lot of sports metaphors in this book, I am not kidding, about pocket presence. And I don't like executive presence because I don't know what it means. The research feels unclear. And there are a lot of people in Navy suits with red ties that command attention or saying jack or worse. And there are a lot of really quiet people who don't look like a lot of the people in Navy suits with red ties, whose brilliance we all need. And so I don't know. So I texted him and I said, I'm getting ready to take on executive presence in this book. Should I do it or not? And I got the 3 dots on the iPhone. I felt like for a second I had like a 7th grade crush. I was like, check yes or no. And then what did you text back?
I think I texted back something to the effect of, yes, can you do a smackdown of charisma too? Because they're both cover for discriminating against women and introverts.
Yeah. And I was like, let's go. So whatever the answer to your question was 30 minutes ago, whatever your question was, the answer is, as the only woman at the table for a long time early in my career, I have zero interest in looking, acting, behaving like the people who built the tables that I'm not supposed to be at. Yeah, none.
What is something you've changed your mind about lately?
God, I changed my mind so many times on a podcast. Didn't I? Like, I really did. Okay, be good. Okay. If you can't be good, be honest. Okay. I'm going to use an example of a colleague that's here that said, this is another sentence I love as a leader. I said, I want to use this example of this thing that's not going very well to figure out what's going wrong systemically, because I'm always looking for problems in systems, not in people. And I said, this is my sentence I love, or the question, what needs to be true for this to have been handled in a different way? And his answer was, you need to stop requiring every single thing to come through you. I need to understand more who's responsible for what and be able to delegate things myself. And so one thing and I cannot wait to talk to you about this on a podcast or like a whole series or something. I can get really ramped up about my founder energy and get really proud of it. Like, yeah, you, I'm gonna pick all the fonts. I'm gonna check all the emails. And then I'm gonna cry for 6 hours, get in a fight with my husband and not get out of bed because I'm gonna check all the emails and pick all the fonts. And so I'm really changing my mind about where those lines exist.
It sounds like you should read a book called The Gifts of Imperfection.
And then I'm gonna rethink our friendship.
Ouch. No, I actually think it needs a sequel about delegation and micromanagement and control, which I think is an extension of perfectionism.
It is, and the thing that I wrote myself, like, have you ever written anything and then you're like, eat the page yourself, dumbass. Like tear this page out and just eat the page you wrote.
No, I've never thought about it that way. But in tech, they call it eating your own dog food, right?
Is that, I don't know.
Yeah. Like you have to use the program that you coded, right? And then see if it works.
Oh, got it, okay, yeah. That productive challenge is a function of trust. Micromanagement is a function of distrust. And I'm rethinking where I'm being productive in my challenging with my team and where I'm not trusting. And what I'm learning is I'm not trusting because I am not doing a good job painfully Dumbledore pulling the context that people need to do their jobs out of my brain because it's really it's exhausting for me. I have 1,000 things in my brain about right now, tomorrow, 5 years, 3 years. Wouldn't it be cool if, wow, I'm gonna take that clock when I leave here and I take a picture of it and I think to rebuild it and then I'm gonna do this. Like I have all this like crazy stuff in my brain as a founder. And then I don't share the context of it. And people expect people, you know, like I actually eat a chapter because there's a whole chapter called Mission Critical ? And the answer is mission clarity. And that means everybody on your team, in your organization, should be able to draw a straight line from what they're doing to the larger context in the organization they can't see every day. And that's time and discipline.
It also sounds like, I mean, this is a classic founder challenge, right? You're blurring the line between founder and owner.
Say more.
Just because you're a founder doesn't mean you have to own everything.
Like it's not even computing.
I mean, you can create something and then just hand it off to other people, right?
Oh, I need my team in the audience to break eye contact. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I do that. Yes, I have very capable people I am not good in fear. And I'm not a good public person. I never wanted to be a public person. And so I can get very fearful and scarcity based. Yeah. And then I'm not good in those places.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
All right, I have some more audience questions for you.
Okay, let's do it.
We've covered some of that ground already, but there were a lot of good ones, so I brought them all. Few that we haven't gotten to. One, I really like this one. If you were dropped back to your freshman year of college, with all the knowledge and wisdom you've accumulated since then, what would be the first thing you would change?
So I would just tell myself that there's no shame in this traditional path not being my path. Because I graduated with my undergrad at 29. You know, I got kicked out of school 3 times. I hitchhiked, I bartended. I did a lot of things where I learned way more about empathy than studying it. And I had a wild path. I worked for a Spanish-speaking division of AT&T for several years. I was wild and unsettled. And I think I would just look back and say, nothing wasted. There's not a thing you're going to do over the next 10 years. Because I graduated from high school when I was 17, so I was literally on the 12-year plan. Which is really interesting because my son's in college, and I overheard him the other night tell one of our friends at dinner that he's kind of in a 5-year program. I was like, wait, what? And so, Mom, on the dozen-year program. So I would just tell myself, 1, it's okay, nothing wasted. And 2, find a better way to be afraid than being scary when you're scared.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's profound. Okay, here's another that I thought was very thought-provoking. As an empathetic person, how do you balance setting boundaries versus always being there for a friend or even someone who takes advantage of your kindness?
I think there's 2 different groups of people, because I don't think friends take advantage of our kindness. And I think you really have to start with some self-examination. In my own life, I would say for a long time, and you and I have talked about this before, I think we talked about it on the podcast. It was a hard conversation, because I think we both did a lot of learning, but I think for a long time, I thought the only value I brought to relationships was the problem solver, the fixer, the taking care of things. I'm the oldest daughter of 4, I have all that set up. And so I think it starts with, it's really good, despite what a lot of weird people are saying right now, it's really good to be an empathetic person. 1, make sure that that's cognitive empathy, not affective empathy, meaning you don't want to feel what everyone feels. That's a recipe for disaster and burnout. And it's also the word that I would call it, as someone, I've been sober for 28 years, we would call it enmeshment, meaning I always tell people, put your hand out. This is not empathy, because I don't know where I end and you begin, so I'm not being empathetic towards you. I'm enmeshed with you. This is empathy, because I understand where I end and where you begin, and what I'm doing is generous. But I understand what makes me whole and where I stop, and what makes you whole and where you stop. So I would really do a lot of self-reflecting around a relationship, a good friendship, love, friendship, whatever, is reciprocal. And if you primarily play a role where you're caregiving and taking care of folks, then that's not about the people you're hanging out with. That's hanging out with yourself a little bit and figuring out that's not the only value you bring. And that's a hard thing for most of us.
Agreed. Okay, this one I'm going to edit a little bit. The question says, the concept of vulnerability has become increasingly popular in the business world. I will say, because of you, Brené, you have popularized vulnerability. And the question is, do you find that there's an evolving meaning of it? Has it changed since you gave your first TED Talk?
Look, just because the concept is more popular doesn't mean the behavior is more popular. Let's start there. And I don't care who you are, where you come from, or what your lived experience is. Vulnerability is irreducible for all of us. It's the birthplace for love, of joy, of trust, of creativity, of courage. We all need it the same, but it is not the same experience for us. Like, I can come up here and be vulnerable, and I have very little to lose. But if you are if you're a person and if you're the only woman at the table, or you're the only black person at the table, or you're the only Latina at the table, or you're the only disabled person at the table, you got a ton to lose. And it's not the same experience for all of us. It should be, but it's not. So like when a white male CEO stands up and, gets teary about something, I love that. But does everybody have the right in that organization to stand up and get teary about something? Or when some people stand up and get teary about something, do people say, yeah, that's what we thought? You can't handle this. And so one of the things that's really interesting when we go in and do Dare to Lead work in organizations is, I don't know if we've talked about this, about 30% of the people who want to do the transformations with us, 30% make it through the assessment. So we say no to 70%, because the first question we ask is, it's not fear that gets in the way of courage. Everybody's afraid. We're all afraid all the time. And fear can be a helpful thing, right? What gets in the way of courage is armor. How do we self-protect when we're in fear? What do we turn to? What armor do we put on? I've already said, for me, micromanaging, perfectionism. I get overly decisive. No, close that down, shut that, move her over here. No, hire him. And then I'm like, oh, I think I'm scared. And then I'm like, let's not do those things. And my team's like, we don't write anything down when you're like this. So I know what my armor is when I'm fearful. And so the first question we ask when we do assessment is, 1, the C-suite will go through this program. They'll model the behaviors we want to see from everyone. 2, we want to interview the people with the least formal power in the organization. 3, we want to understand here from the people with the least power why armor is required to work here or rewarded. If you're willing to do that level of interrogation, we're happy to work here with you. If you're not willing to talk about those things, if you're not willing to talk about power, if you're not willing to talk about identity, you're not a good fit for us. And then then through that conversation, we lose a lot of people, which is great.
I want to put that on the playlist of every leader in America to hear that message.
Yeah, it's great, because if you don't want to talk about power, there's 1 or 2 reasons. You're misusing it, or you plan to misuse it and you'd like, plausible deniability that you didn't take the power class from me. Those are the only, but if you're willing to talk about power, and you're willing to talk about identity, and you're willing to talk about the intersection of those two, regardless of the political wins, then let's get to work. Let's get to work. And people think that we measure our work based on cultural metrics, and we care about cultural metrics, of course, but we mostly measure our work in terms of performance. Because when people are seen, heard, and respected and valued, they're unstoppable. And you can get good performance using fear and behavior for a very short amount of time. But then fear has a very short shelf life because our nervous systems can't handle it for a long period of time, right? So to me, vulnerability hasn't changed. There are more people talking about it, a growing number of people working at it, and an increased number of people giving it lip service because it has some popularity, which takes 5 seconds to see through. I see dead people, I see your fake vulnerability. And is there anything, I can't see y'all very well because of the lights, but is there anything worse in the whole world than faux vulnerability? Like that reads as such cringy manipulation to us, right? Yeah.
Well, Brené, I think we are almost at time. Let me ask you a closing question, which is if you had one piece of advice for everyone in this room to go and find their strong ground, what would it be?
This is such a good question.
While you're thinking, I just want to say to the audience, the way that Brené pauses is an act of courage, because most people think they have to fill the silence, and I have watched her over and over again come up with deeper and more interesting answers because of that pause, and that's a takeaway for me, is just watching you do that and saying, wow, I don't have to have an immediate answer to everything. That's grounding.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, and I'm probably surprised by this answer. Self-awareness, knowing who you are, combined with real, maybe you can help me find a word here, real ownership of your thinking, your attention, and your focus is the way forward. So self-awareness combined with the things that people are desperately after from us right now, which is our attention, our focus, and our thinking. You need some sovereignty there. Because there's an increasingly eerie feeling that I have that there are two groups of people that are being created in the world right now, which are people who are thinking, really paying attention to their attention, and really being mindful about their focus and some self-awareness. Those people are increasingly running the world. And that was really my experience in January when we were together. Like, those people are running the world, and then they're looking at the rest of us and saying, don't worry your pretty little head about it, just keep scrolling. And at some point, you're going to have to read and think and own your focus and own your thinking. And we cannot and it's not just about your life and your career, but our democracy and our world. You have to have sovereignty over those things and be fully aware that people are after them in some very egregious ways.
Brené, thank you. It's always a joy to learn from you.
Thanks. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.